Father, Son, and Holy Spirit. Hail Mary,
Full of grace, the Lord is with thee. Blessed art thou among women, and blessed is the fruit of thy womb, Jesus. Holy Mary, Mother of God, pray for us sinners, now and at the hour of our death.
Some facts about me: I'm not usually a morning person, so my voice is still getting used to the day, I guess. I like to be contrarian. Father Lou will tell you this. If I find out someone's a Gator, I'll just start doing the Seminole chomp. If I find out someone's a Seminole, I'll start doing the Gator chomp. I don't really have allegiance. I just like to, when I agree with people, I tend to see the conversation kinds of like dies away. And I like to see when I disagree with people on like silly things, like not like things of like church or truth, but I like to disagree with people to see where the conversation goes. Arguing about movies, sports teams, whatever that might be. This is actually my 9th year of full-time youth ministry. This is my 3rd church that I've worked at. I'll backtrack. So I've been here a little over 2 years, like 2 years and some change. I started during Easter, so it was like kind of a weird time to pick up when Caitlin was leaving to be a full-time mom. And I love St. Rafe's. I came here at different points when I was like a teenager and a young adult, and so like being able to come here for intentional full-time ministry with Father Tim and now like with Father Curtis was like an incredible blessing and like total God moment for that transition. Before here, I was in Riverview for 4 years at a church that was mostly military families and not much around it. Obviously, St. Pete, very different city. So I was there for 4 years, doing mostly high school, some middle school, and then confirmation. And then before that, I was actually in Phoenix. I was in Phoenix for 3 years. I was 2 years as a full-time youth minister at a very Hispanic parish. So I learned a little bit of Spanish, but not very much, and I lost most of what I did learn. So hablo un poco español. What kind of got me into ministry was Life Team National, the organization itself. I know some of you guys might have grandkids or kids yourself that went through and maybe did the summer staff program at Cove Crest or went as a camper to Cove Crest. I went through a good youth group at Light of Christ with my youth minister, Neil. Same youth minister Father Lou had, and if you know Father Victor Ambrose, same youth minister Father Victor had. And then after that, I did the summer staff at Cove Crest, which led into saying yes to doing a mission year with Life Team, which was in Atlanta, which led into saying yes to an internship out in Phoenix, where I got to work with some really cool people. One of them was like my hero. Like as I went through like high school, going to student conferences and hearing Mark Hart speak, I got to work with Mark Hart, if you guys know who he is, and it was just being around people that were so contagious and infectious and joyful about ministry led me to the point where I could not sit at a desk and just do like a professional like type job. Like I had to be around the energy of what youth ministry is and ministry in general. The church is messy, strange, beautiful, and absolutely not boring. That is my experience of the past 8 years. But yeah, my home parish was Light of Christ that I grew up at. But I love St. Pete, and this city has a very, very prided place in my heart as far as where the downtown was, where it is now, what's been coming alive, and what's been able to survive the pandemic especially. I've been watching very closely to see which businesses have been able to open up and which ones have not, and which ones don't have phone numbers right now. But so I do youth ministry and also young adult ministry. So I asked Louise originally if I could also talk about young adult ministry as well, and she said absolutely. So youth ministry, if you have a middle schooler, you know that your middle schooler is very different than your high schooler if you have a high schooler. Or if you, like as you watch your kid grow, you know that middle school is very different than high school. Middle school was relatively new to me when I started at St. Raph's, but it instantly like won a very big place in my heart as I was here. For me, a youth minister's job is actually to make their job obsolete. A lot of times, as you talk to like kids and teenagers, they can feel, for whatever reason, for a lot of different reasons, that they might be a visitor in their own parish. Whether it's they're just like not used to being like themselves right now because they're going through a lot of changes, they feel awkward, maybe they don't feel at home anywhere. But they don't feel like, they feel like visitors at their own church. They don't feel native to it. Either some might, like high schoolers might treat it more like a joke, and some might say like they just don't want to spend time there because they just don't want to. They've chosen something else, or they just don't see it as a home, or maybe they don't really see anything as a home. But I think the way I see youth ministry and young adult ministry to a large extent is hospitality. Making an environment where they can be vulnerable, where they can be welcomed, where they can feel that they're at peace and have some measure of home-like quality to being here on campus, especially with youth ministry. I know like the most exciting stuff is going away to trips. Telling a kid like you can go to Cove Crest and go whitewater rafting is a big selling point. But I think the mission field is when we get them on campus and they choose eventually to spend their time here. You can tell a lot by a high schooler on where they spend their time. They do to an extent have the ability to choose their own time. So when they have that optional time, how they spend it says a lot with like their priorities and what they see as a priority. And that's not like any fault to them if they choose to spend it in a certain way. They're going to spend it when it's life-giving. I see youth ministry as a huge hospitality focus. Middle school is different than high school. For middle school, if you know like the priesthood, seminary, they talk about 4 areas of formation, 4 pillars. Intellectual, spiritual, pastoral, and human. So it's like spiritual, forming the prayer life of the priest, intellectual, forming their like knowledge to be able to answer the most obscure questions that they get asked after Mass. Pastoral, how to do service, how to like share grief with people, and then human, how to not be awkward. Middle school, I think, like, yes, there's catechesis. We follow this curriculum through Life Team, and we cover topics that they do like find interesting, and they ask great questions. But for the most part, it's about loving them and helping them with their human formation, helping them know what it's like to enter the healthy community. So just the context of youth group on Monday nights for them, of like teaching them the boundaries in not like a classroom kind of way, that they can have healthy friendships, healthy boundaries, and healthy understanding of what community is. And in that like context, there's some like great moments of prayer, great moments of understanding of the faith, great moments of them loving each other and showing Christ to each other. And then there's some like hilariousness, like we did this night on Mary. I asked like the leading question, like in the talk, like, who do you guys see in your life as holy? And this kid like legitimately raises his hand very politely, and he answers, donuts. And I like lost every like thought that I had, and I was like trying to rationalize. I was like, oh, you like literally holy. Okay, donuts have holes. Okay, I get where you're going. That's not where I'm going. We'll move on. And then with high school, and Father Chris talks a lot about this with development of a child, but middle school, like they're kind of wet cement. So like we're still kind of etching a lot of things into them, their habits, who they are, and they're sponges in a lot of ways. With high schoolers, Father Chris says it's kind of like hugging a porcupine a lot of times. They are a little more hardened, With middle schoolers, I give them a game, they just start playing the game. Like, they don't even listen to all the rules, they just start playing the game, and like, they're crazy, they're chaotic. High schoolers, if I introduce a game, I have to really kind of sell it and explain and prove to them that it will be a fun game. There's this element of skepticism, and their time is more valuable at that age to them. So when you ask them for more of it, they want to know that it's going to be spent well. Probably the hardest area of ministry out of the ones that I'm responsible for. To get them to want to spend time at church at that age, it's a challenge. And like one of the when I first started, one of the things I added to confirmation was that they have to come to 6 life nights, the Sunday night youth groups, in addition to the confirmation sessions. They can choose any of the 6 they want, and but they have to come to 6 because that is their community. That is would be what they would continue on with after confirmation. And then in the orientation, I had a parent that asked, because I also added in this trip. I'm not sure if you guys know Night of Joy, Rock the Universe, but I added in Rock the Universe as a trip. We go to Universal Studios, and there's Christian bands playing, and we break up into groups and we go on rides and we listen to the music, whether it's like Jeremy Camp or Switchfoot or whatever bands are that year. A parent raised their hand and like, does Rock the Universe count as one of, would that count as a life night? And I kind of like thought for a moment, and I was like, well, a life night is an hour and a half of structured time and a half-hour dinner. And Rock the Universe is 12 to 13 hours with a kid. We like leave at 2 and we get back at 2 a.m. So I instantly said yes, because like, if they're willing to give more time, then that's more opportunity for God to do something in relationship with that high schooler. So with high school, I just see like that bargaining for their time has been like the focus of what we've been trying to do, because relationship is built upon time. They won't trust me if they see me for just 1 hour a week. They won't trust our core team with vulnerable conversations if they only see them 1 hour a week. But the more time that we can spend with them to show them that we're not just passive, that we are wanting to be a part of their life. So yeah, high school has been like this kind of like, and it has changed over the 8 years that I've been in ministry, where there is more things pulling for their attention, whether it's social media or new activities, or sports has really like stretched the amount of time that they ask for. With youth ministry, this parish has always had a history of investing in it and the vibrancy of it. And as a community, I feel that beyond like church administration, a community, that's always been like a desire for this community of having the teens and the middle schoolers well fed. Youth ministers here, like I love Jesse, I love Keith, I love Caitlin, all these people that like are still like in the area, and maybe they're in different ministry roles now or doing different things now, but they talk so fondly of like what happened here when they were a youth minister. And to hear that like is consolation, even in like the craziness of like getting 5 phone calls about different retreat conflicts for the confirmation retreat. Like all this consolation of the past of St. Raphael's and going forward for the future. Yeah, it's been really amazing. And then young adult ministry. So youth ministry, I break up into middle school and high school. Young adult ministry, I think there's actually really 2 separate demographics there. And young adult ministry is honestly actually like my like side passion project. I really love coming up with new ways to do young adult ministry right now. So if you might have a young adult that you know, and it might stress you out that they might not be coming to church, or they might not see church as important, and I don't necessarily have an answer for you for that right Um, but I can say that, at least from when I moved back here from Phoenix, 6 years ago now. When I moved back here from Phoenix to now, there is a huge amount of young adult ministry comparatively. When I came back, I asked where there was young adult ministry, like where was a young adult group that I could go to, and it was literally like Christ the King in Tampa. Like, so if you wanted to like find young adults to like share faith with, you had to go there. And now there's been this more regional effort where it's not just Christ the King, but St. Lawrence has a young adult group in Tampa, Sacred Heart in Tampa has a young adult group. There's some really great things happening out in East Hillsboro and Brandon, and there's a North Pinellas County group. And then here in St. Pete, we kind of jumped on this regional bandwagon that young adults typically don't sign up at a parish. My mom actually didn't really sign up at a parish until like I kind of nagged her to, because I had told her it was important. So finally she signed up at Our Lady of Lords. I don't know why, it was a weird thing. My aunt didn't want to do it either. But young adults don't like to sign up at parishes typically. It takes a long effort. Like they'll be going to a parish for 2 or 3 years before they sign up for it, or maybe it's not until like they get married and they have a baby. But young adults are more regional. They not necessarily have parish pride, but they have city pride. There's so many young adults that like will say like St. Pete like is home, and in that they kind of like see like different churches as their home. So this regional bandwagon. So we have a collective of 5 parishes that do the St. Pete Young Adult Ministry. Us, St. Jude's, Father Padilla was their point person, but now he's away, so he's in Christ the King. But St. Jude's, Holy Family, St. Paul's in St. Pete, and St. John Vianney. Together we kind of do a rotation of different events. We do monthly socials before COVID. We have a men's and women's group that meet monthly, and we sprinkle in different service opportunities. We did a service project at Foundations of Life that, like one time, we've tried to do different things, and then quarterly we do, my offering to the group is quarterly we do a theology on tap. And honestly, this is kind of like the entry point. When we talk about ministry, there's a lot of different ways people enter into ministry, but as like leaders, we kind of got to strategize for what those entry points look like, right? I'm sure you guys have someone that's like the membership coordinator that like is the person that make the calls when someone comes to the parish. With high school, like constantly thinking of entry points. Like we're not catering to an age demographic, we're catering to a million different personalities. So like when I place people in their confirmation small groups, I place people with Kelly Dukes because they're theater kids and she's a theater mom and she knows that. So we're catering to personalities. But theology on tap for young adults is a passive event. So we have, they can come in, they can sit down wherever they want, they can talk to whoever they want, or they don't need to. They can have a beer, they can have food. If they don't want to drink, there's food at the place that we choose. We chose 3 Daughters. It's a passive event, and then there's a talk. So we had Father Padilla come back from Tampa to give the talk this past time, and it was kind of just having, when you disagree with someone and having that polite conversation, how to evangelize, how to have healthy dialogue with people. And that talk speaks a lot to young adults who kind of can jump the gun and get temperamental and get aggressive in what they feel. But it's a passive event, so they can ask a question if they want. We just had a theology on tap on Tuesday, and where if I have like a Bible study, I might get like maybe 9 people for young adults. But this passive event off campus, we had 90, and I wish I had a projector to like show a picture, but like it was very life-giving for me to see that that there's still this group of young adults that want to come together in a large group setting. But it's an entry point because probably about half of them are people that have been to a ministry event before, and the other half were brand new faces to us. But using that as an entry point for this regional ministry, like doing a large group event and then slowly transitioning them to the point where we can give them a parochial identity, we find out where they live, and then we invite them to like actually plug into their community. Oftentimes the easiest plug is to set them up with the youth minister to see if that youth minister needs another core member. And then, yeah. But with young adults, there's kind of two different brackets of like 18 to 25-year-olds, which like kind of secular psychologists have been calling emerging adulthood, where they really wouldn't say that they're adults at all, even though legally they are. This like age of instability, age of self-discovery, self-focus, and feeling in between. Like a college student at 19 might say like, I don't feel like an adult. And then we go into like the young adulthood after that of like the young professionals that they've just started their career. A lot of people move to the area, and we're catering to this kind of group with the regional ministry, these young professionals that don't have family around, don't have community. And again, like I say, this hospitality ministry, like making them feel welcome and making them feel like that they have a native church. It's young adult ministry is still a thing in progress, and we're trying to figure out better ways to do it constantly. But right now, we're doing what we can with the talents that we have. So a cool thing on the horizon in December, we're actually going to host at St. Rafe's the regional young adult retreat. We had to look for a new location, but and Father Curtis and Deacon Jim worked together to like kind of make it a possibility here. So December 12th, we're going to actually have a large group of young adults on property to be able to enter into community here. But all these different ages, middle school, high school, college students, young professionals, there are all these different personalities that the bottom line is they're in transition. They're not where they're going to be, like they're not settled into a vocation, they're not settled into who they are. They don't really know who they are in a lot of those ages. Like you ask a middle schooler like that kind of question, like describe who you are, like they'll go to the superficial answers, they'll go to the sports they play. You ask like a college student like what they want to be, like what they want to do, like they chose the degree because they liked the topic, but like they might not want the career after they get the degree. And I think overall, like as a parish, the more that we can just kind of love them in the midst of this chaos, love this group in the midst of them not knowing themselves and not knowing what they want. I know, like as like adults, we can ask the question, okay, what do you want to see in your church? If you ask a young adult that question, or a teenager that question, they'll say, I don't know. But if you propose an idea and you say, would you like this? They will say yes or no. Would you like to, would you like to have a coffee Bible study at the Blend? Yes. Okay, let's do that. But if you say, what additional things would you like to see outside youth group? There'll be crickets. What additional things would you like to see as young adults? Crickets. They might throw out like the most recent like restaurant to open up. Like they might say like, oh well, we want to go here. Well, what do you want to do when we go here? But loving these groups in the midst of not knowing themselves, I think, is probably the posture that we need to like go forward with. The young adults in your lives that maybe don't prioritize church right now. It's really hard to not like kind of jump into that topic to like because we love them. We love the people in our lives. Ministering to our family is like the hardest mission field ever. Being the witness, showing presence, and inviting other people maybe to help with that situation. If there's a young adult, like I think out of the new participants in our young adult community, about 50% of them need to be met with one-on-one, maybe for coffee or whatever, before they feel comfortable coming to a group event. And then out of that 50%, 25% will actually come to the event. And that's just something that like I know going in. Like if I'm going to take time for an hour for coffee with this person that just moved to the area, it's a 50-50 shot of them actually showing up to the event because they are in transition and they don't know what they want. And but making that time and making that effort, whether or not it's going to like bear fruit, it's hard, but I think that's where we need to be. Mentally. So we have like the Going Gone report from Cara that talks about like disaffiliation of the Catholic Church. But because I've been getting more into young adult ministry, I've been pursuing like okay, well, why do young adults exist? And then the psychology and the secular groups are saying, well, 18 to 25 isn't actually young adulthood, it's actually like emerging adulthood because they're so in flux, even more so than 25 to 39. And so mentally, like I kind of got to treat like a 22-year-old with the understanding like that, not that they can't have a leadership role, but if like I invite them to have a role in doing something with their retreat, there's kind of got to be like a partner with them to make sure that like if something happens, like friend's birthday, like sometimes like there's this sensibility with a younger young adult, emerging adult, so kind of like separating them to understand like how to administer them differently, just like middle school, high school. We don't actually physically separate them because there are 23-year-olds that are much more mature than me sometimes. But because to kind of mentally know that like a college student is different than someone that's in a career that's working a 9 to 5 and is thinking about how much sleep they can get versus a college student who's like, how little sleep can I get and still like get up for class? Like there's kind of a difference in that. So not like separate methods, they just like kind of, at Theology on Tap, like there's a lot of people that are coming by themselves, and I can see like, okay, USS group's clumping over here, St. Lawrence is clumping over here. This is kind of like a road table. So like a guy comes in by himself, like I sit, so like subconsciously, like I started sitting with people that I thought they would like get along. Like, oh, this is a married couple. Oh, this is a dating couple. Let's put them on the table together. Fascinating. Watching like Father Lou or Father Curtis interact, like they are the gurus of like small talk in like quick situations, so they can quickly make that impression. But where we choose to start the conversation, Father Padilla in his talk talked about like the bread of life discourses of like, okay, Jesus told the hard truths about like this is my body, this is my flesh. But he was journeying with the people for 5 chapters before that, and he like fed them, like he said all these other things before he went to the hard truth. If you consistently, like we all pretty much go to the same mass. Like I always go to the 5:30. I helped with the 11:30 for a couple months. We see the same crowds, so I think even on a Sunday mass we can like see the same families, and maybe like those families seem stressed sometimes, but like we can like build that relationship over the weeks of like of talking to them and not starting instantly with even the ministry invitation sometimes might not be the first thing we want to do. Just like letting them know that like we're like a fun person and letting them just hear like our personalities a little bit before we start to jump into inviting them to a ministry or inviting them to content sometimes. Sometimes we jump to content because we know the content is good, but if they're not picking up the content because they don't trust like what we're saying, then like it's not going to be. But like I think consistency of relationships, finding that one person like each core member for high school, I asked them like, okay, which like 3 teens are you like discipling? Like there might be like 20 kids at youth group, but each core member should have like a focus of a couple teens that they are reaching out to. So like, I think just being intentional and conscious of the flow of the conversation. I love Formed, but that might not be the first step with a new person, if that makes sense. Life Teen was 1985, I think, is the founding year, but it came from Phoenix, and it came from a priest, a youth minister, and the music minister at the time, as a collaborative thing, that they wanted to make something that would be more dynamic than traditional CCD, because once they get into that, the teenage years, they need something more dynamic, because they're thinking more abstractly. So it started out in Phoenix at this parish, St. Tim's, and it spread throughout like Phoenix and then like more nationally. So like the 2 hubs that kind of happened were like Phoenix and Atlanta. Their curriculum kind of follows this flow, like every life night kind of follows the flow of gather, proclaim, break, send. They say it's like kind of after the mass, like we gather, we proclaim the word, we break bread, we send. Opening game, short talk, like 10 minutes at max. If it goes longer than that, they start throwing vegetables. And then we break them up into small groups to process that talk in a deeper way. And then we have a closing prayer experience, whether that's teaching them about like Ignatian reflection, whether that's a rosary, whether that's adoration, exposition, ending the night in different ways to stretch their spiritual focus. I think vulnerability can have, like, I look at it at different levels, like maybe a teen expresses vulnerability in sharing, like when a family member is sick, like, I used to learn when I will talk about that, but when they get to the point where they do, that's kind of a moment of vulnerability. Asking for prayers for their dad, because their dad has a job that is a little more risky with his life, asking for those prayers, that's like one vulnerability. So like the personal vulnerability, and then when I would say the vulnerability you're talking about is kind of like that they can be transparent with the questions they ask. Like one time, there were a couple middle school girls, and I was walking to Carline at the school, and they asked a pointed question about, do you support Chick-fil-A? And I was just walking to Carline, and I wasn't thinking about the like phrasing of their question. And I said, I love Chick-fil-A. It's so good. Polynesian sauce, sriracha, oh my God. And like, they kind of bring up like what you would think like from that phrasing, that question of, well, Chick-fil-A doesn't want like my friend to ever be able to get married. Like they disagree with same-sex marriage. And I kind of backtrack their thought process to the point like, okay, we're jumping like 7 different steps in understanding like what like the context of marriage is inside like the Christian faith. But like for them to be candid, I think is vulnerability. Like for them to feel comfortable enough around an adult to express like that disagreement, I think is vulnerability. And they do. Like their social media like is kind of full of every social issue right now because they've been home for so long and they can focus on those, whether it's Black Lives Matter versus defund the police, whether it's Breonna Taylor, whether it's election stuff right now. Like they have a lot of stuff that like is going through their minds, and we have had 3 youth groups of each since we started back. So like I'm still getting used to like, okay, I haven't seen them in 6 months. So they haven't jumped into those questions yet, other than I know that those social medias have been full of it. Like, different parents have talked to me about it right now, of like, hey, like, this is what's going on with so with my son, my daughter. So the parents are asking questions right now, and I think once the kids get back used to the community, I think they're going to start asking questions too. And I hope our priest will be there at Youth Group to help get to this.
Lord, I lift your name on high. Lord, I love to sing your praises. I'm so glad you're in my life. I'm so glad you came to save us.